Today on Parts Hold, we talk about how to prepare for disaster. We're also going to catch up because we took a little bit of a break. So we're going to find out what's going on with Kaylee, what's going on with Cliff, and I might share a detail or two, but not much. They're the kind of the stars of the show. That and much, much more coming up today on Parts Hold.
We'll be right back.
Okay, so we took a little bit of a break, but it's kind of nice to be back on the Parts Hold train, and let's welcome back again for, I believe it was your third or fourth time, Kaylee. Like you're a regular now.
I guess so, yeah. I think it's
she's a part of it.
Yeah, so she's part of the Parts Hold family. So welcome back, Kaylee. How's everything going for you?
Oh, great. Just, dealing with mom life stuff. Got a kid with a rash. Baby's sleeping in the other room because the babysitter canceled. So we'll see how this episode goes.
Well, I guess getting it all out of the way in one day is probably ideal, all right? So, okay, so your daughter has a rash, so you do this thing where you're like, okay, the responsible parent thing to do is to keep her home. At what point in the day did you decide, oh, I probably could have just sent her?
Immediately after I said, I think you can stay home.
That's great. Well, I would like to commend you because I believe that probably 50% of the parental population would have gone long sleeves and send, and not really thought about the rash or infecting other children or anything like that. And,
maybe in the time. It's summer though. It's like 110 right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was driving through northern and central California last week, and it was 117. And I was in an RV, which was awesome. But 117 does not feel so good when you hop out of the old RV. So 110 is no joke either. But speaking of parents who would send their kids to school with rashes, how you doing, Cliff?
I'm doing fantastic. And by the way, 117 doesn't sound that bad to me.
What? So you don't mind the hot weather?
Well, I love it hot. Obviously where I'm at, it's hot and humid. And so I would prefer it that way. Like I want to go outside and have to cut the air to walk out the door. So
where are you at? Where are you at this week? What state?
I am in Virginia. So I'm just 3.5 hours north of my home.
Okay. So did you drive?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so which was great because, sometimes you get and experience delays in the airport. And so it's a good change of pace to be able to drive and not have to deal with that.
Yeah, you went a little nuts. You went from, what'd you go from Nevada to Oregon or something like that?
Nope, I went from Phoenix to Las Vegas and then flew to Oregon and then drove 3.5 hours from nowhere, Oregon to really, really nowhere, Oregon. And then when I came back home, we drove down to the coast and spent some time at the coast. And then I drove back and then got in the car Monday morning and drove here.
Wow. Okay. So that's the super sexy part of coaching.
Yes. Yeah.
Planes, trains, and automobiles. Good stuff.
That's exactly right.
Well, I'm super excited about our topic today, and I think it's timely and timeless all at the same time. And I said time 4 times right there. But what we're going to talk about today is contingency plans and how to respond when things go wrong. And I think I'm going to start off with Kaylee because she's coming off and just to give everybody a little bit of context, we're about a week and a half off of the CDK issue where it was shut down for a couple of weeks and 15,000 dealers were affected. It was a pretty big deal. And so for Kaylee at Parts Edge and Cliff and I with Chris Collins, we're not directly affected by it, but our clients really are. And it was really interesting to see the responses of our clients. And I was going to have Kaylee kind of start off and just kind of thinking about in terms of emergency preparedness. What did you see out there? I mean, maybe the good and the bad, both.
I feel like no one was really prepared for this type of thing. I know there's power outages and storms and things that happen, but nothing like this has ever happened. So I think the way to get prepared is to go through it. And I think we just saw everyone just kind of scrambling and trying to figure it out. And that's the most important thing too, is doing nothing. You're not like gonna learn, or you can still do business, but to not try to be perfect at it, because it's just not going to be perfect. You're going to miss things, but to try to track everything. um we certainly learned a lot from it, to just helping to support. That's our whole thing, is to support parts departments. And because I don't think this problem is ever going to really go away. It's going to get worse, I think, this type of situation.
Yeah, I think that the more we rely on technology, the greater the possibility of it going backwards on us. And if you just think about even in parts departments, like what did inventory look like 10 years ago compared to what it is now? It's so crazy how advanced it's gotten. But sometimes the old ways can be a really good backup plan. So did you have any dealers that were really, really super responsive and actually are going to kind of come out of this better than they went in?
Oh, definitely. I think just having those just printed documents, so you can literally write things down and have that. I've just It's, our industry is so resilient. And I think the what's come from this is just the thinking outside of the box, I feel like. Because I also think too, all the kind of the newbies that have joined the industry too probably learned them more out of that week and however long it was. What was it, 2 weeks or?
I think so. It was really close to 2 weeks.
Yeah, learned more because they actually they had to go through the day-to-day process and not rely on technology. So I think, um if anything, I don't think I answered your question, but I think if anything, we're learning from this. And immediately, we have our backups of the inventory, so we immediately sent that to all of our clients. We didn't wait for them to ask, because but then once we sent that, it got their brains going like, hey, can you isolate this area of my inventory so I can look at this, so they can still, because think about the people that do thousands of ROs a day, like how big those inventories are, and just how do you find the parts? That's a big
Yeah,
yeah.
because you just rely on a computer and it telling you what bin to go look in and everything like that. It's really crazy the electronic mapping that happens. Now, Cliff, you were in parts departments while it was all going on, right? So you did a couple of parts visits. And what did you see while you were on the ground?
I think one of the things, there's a couple of takeaways. First, number one, I think the kind of thought process that it's going to happen, that something's going to happen, I think is number one, and then start building a plan around that. So, one of the stores that I was in just so happened to still print off his month end reporting, and with that, he printed off a counterpad every month. So he had that backed up while it wasn't, current and up to date. They still had that with them so that it could look up stuff and still, go and search and still have an idea of where it is on the bin. So I think that stood out in my mind. The other thing that one of the major takeaways for me, um, was having a process, some sort of process, and kind of along the same lines of having the month end report. Like if you're not doing something that's proactive to still be able to do business in power outages, computers down. We've all been in the business long enough that we've experienced computers being down during the day. And we've all been around folks that have kind of lost their mind and said, "Oh well, shut the doors and let's not do anything." So you know, sticking our head in the sand, and I think that's what Kelly's saying is too. Sticking our head in the sand and not doing anything is not the right thing. And so I think having a plan and having a process of how to do business even in difficult times is probably a big takeaway for me. And I've got some others, but we'll share them in a little bit.
Yeah, so something that kind of popped into my head was that it gave a lot of credence to making sure that however you do your inventory and inventory organization, like if it's logical and it's in the computer, that you might be able to work through it without. And like the things that I kind of thought of is that, like, if I was a parts department, I'd probably want some sort of like a little, like a folder, right? Or maybe like a little, like, if I can digress a little bit, like a trapper keeper. You guys remember those things? With the 3-ring binders. Well, Kaylee's too young for this, but Cliff remembers. But like a 3-ring binder, and like maybe some sort of like a physical map of how the parts department layout is. I
Like a fire plan. Like,
yes, totally like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
that bucket that you get. I don't have, but I imagine I have a bucket emergency. I grab all that stuff, and then you have a plan. Yeah.
Yeah, so just like that, probably a physical copy of how your matrix layout is, right? So sourcing things, gosh, there's so much stuff, and then it also, it leads to perpetual inventory. Probably would be a good idea that you kind of regularly have that kind of stuff on file, and maybe once a month you have a printed version, even if you have a bunch of parts. Like, what would it be like to have like a $10 million parts inventory and try to do all this stuff without a computer system? Like, that kind of blew me away. We got a couple of big clients between all of us, and I'm sure that was probably a nightmare for them. But I didn't hear one thing I was really proud of with a lot of our clients. I didn't hear a lot of people complaining and saying, I don't know what to do. Like, they were just getting to work trying to figure something out. Maybe they did good stuff, maybe they did bad stuff, but like you said, they weren't putting their head in the sand saying we're closing and not going to do business. So it reminded me a lot of what happened during COVID. Like, right when COVID happened, there was just this really amazing clear divide between people that panicked and people that got to work. And kind of the same thing happened with this that I think happened in COVID is that there's people that came out of COVID with a new skill set. And people are going to come out of this CDK thing with a new skill set. And the thing is that you can't plan for CDK to go down for 2 weeks, but you can plan for the unexpected. And the thing from a leadership standpoint, if you're running a parts department, the first thing you have to do is have a cool head. If you start panicking, then your people start panicking, then the customers start panicking, the service department starts panicking, and then you're no use to anybody. So that cool head prevailing and understanding that, like, for the most part, what happens, it's not going to kill us, right? We're going to live through it. We're going to go home and we're going to sleep in our bed and we're going to come back in the morning and all those parts are still going to be in the parts room. So you have to kind of accept it with a proper amount of worry.
I think the other concern I was hearing a lot of was just paying people. And that creates chaos when people are, that's their life, their security, and they're not sure what's going to happen. So I think, like, when these kinds of things happen, that's the first thing to address. Like, everyone's going to get paid. This is how, like, because people are paid off commission a lot of the time.
That's right.
Having that plan so that everyone can be like, okay, we're still going to get paid. Now we can get through this. Because, it's stressful to think like, you're not going to get paid. And how are you going to pay your bills and take care of your family? So.
Yeah, and I think that that's a worry, like, of the employees, but I don't know about you. That was probably the first thing that was addressed with most people. And really, if we stop and think about it, and we're not in that fight or flight, it's pretty easy, right? Like, we have historical data of what we've paid people in the past, and there's a way that we can kind of estimate through.
Yeah.
And I think that what you said is that step one is like, hey, no matter what's happening, we're all going to be taken care of, right? At worst, could we physically write a check? Yes, we could do all that stuff. But it is funny. I think that that's where employees go to first. You're right on the head. It's like, oh, how am I going to get paid? And I don't know any dealership that wouldn't pay their people. Like, it's so far from, I think, the reality. And maybe we're fortunate enough that we don't know those dealers. I don't know. But it seems like everybody really took the high road. And the faster that they reacted, the better off they were.
I definitely had some dealers that initially said, "Great, this is going to create a chaos. It's going to create a lot of work." But most of them adapted pretty quick, and I think that's where the leadership portion kind of shone through in those difficult times of how, okay, I'm reacted to it, and it's a mess, but now I'm going to figure it out. And I think the same could be true. You alluded to COVID and what took place there, like the leadership that stood out for me in experiencing everything that surrounded COVID. I think that's one of the things that stood out to me a lot was there was a lot of people that got taken care of, just like you're talking about financially. B, there was just a lot of people who just figured it out. But the thing that stands out to me the most, both with that scenario, what just recently happened, the times where we've experienced, and Christian, you've experienced this as much as I have, but hurricanes and those type of things, like natural disasters, the thing that happens in all of these situations is we come out better. We come out better leaders. We come out better people. And really that's a decision that we make in the midst of it, but we can come out better, operating better. Like just thinking back to COVID, one of the things that came out of just the initial happenings of COVID was we appreciated our customers a whole lot more. We were willing to go the extra mile for them. We were willing to go pick up and deliver their vehicle. We really did appreciate their business and really did want them to be at the dealership, and we wanted to service their car. The other thing I experienced in being in some parts departments and being around a lot of dealerships during crisis, especially parts departments, is the parts departments that had an organization structure to their warehouse seemed to not panic as much about inventories. And to your point, Christian, those stores that were doing perpetual inventories and had a consistent process of how to do that, they didn't seem to panic as much. And they don't seem to panic as much when things happen. Like, when the power goes out, they just grab the pad, or they just walk to a shelf, or they just go, okay, well, lights are over here. And so they just go, what I'm saying? So the other thing that come out of that or is coming out of all of these natural disasters and issues that we are going to experience and continue to experience is how super organized can I be, and what does my process and structure look like in my department?
Naturally, parts managers are typically over preparers, very detailed, and just have those. But like you're saying, I think this kind of identified, even if you had a good process, some weaknesses in the process to get even better. And just simply having that fire bucket plan so you can just grab it and keep going, a lot easier than a little bit of scrambling that happened, even though it was like not super crazy, but there was some scrambling of like, okay, wait, what do we do?
But I was just thinking back years ago when the power would go out or a computer would go down. Like the younger generation seemed to completely panic. Like, what are we going to do now? And then, the person who's been doing it a long time that just reached in a drawer and pulled out a paper RO or a paper invoice or whatever. And we're like, oh, we're going to continue to do business. And then they just start writing it out. And people are like, oh, you actually write things out. Like, oh, that's why we did things. So
Yeah.
it's a fascinating thing there too.
The younger generation doesn't know how to write. Yes.
Oh yeah, their handwriting's terrible. It's so cool. It makes me look like my handwriting looks like a font compared to some of those kids.
I was helping my little brother fill out an application for a job last night, and his handwriting, I was like, just even simply writing like the date. He was like, wait, what? How do you do that?
Right? the thought of like the DDMMYYYY layout.
Yeah, like 6, 9, 24.
Well, imagine if you gave one of it. So think about this though. When we're talking about payroll, and you were talking about we could write a physical check, those are not written out. Like I bet that there's some payroll clerks out there that had no idea how to write a physical check because they don't do a physical check anymore. Like if you threw out something, certain things, they would have no idea how to fill that out. I don't think, my kids are 24, 21, and 18. I don't know that they could fill out a check because I don't even think they have checks.
And I was taught how to do checks in high school. Like that was part of a curriculum that I learned I don't remember if it was a marketing class or an accounting class or something like that, but
like a working class for me.
Okay.
Credit for working, but then we also got to learn like life things, like writing checks and
I was too busy in that class trying to get my wife to pay attention to me.
Yeah, that totally sounds like you. But I'm a huge proponent of that kind of stuff in schools.
Yes.
Like how do we do life is super important. I think that's great to hear that you have that in school.
How do you buy a car, or how do you pay? Like that should be a thing that's taught, I think.
Oh yeah, unpacking a credit score, how to build it, what kind of things do it, how to how to understand interest rates on the credit cards and the loans, and like home mortgage amortization. Like there's a lot of cool things that I would have loved to have learned at 17 or 16 that I think probably would have us way more prepared for the future.
Yeah, because learning it from someone in a high school or not that's not your parent, you might listen a little more, I think. Because I definitely listened more to other
Oh yeah,
people.
it's the cool uncle or the cool aunt syndrome. Like we can say it to our kids 1,000 times, but some stranger says it and all of a sudden it's a fact.
Yes.
Um, that's a little secret of coaching that works too, just so everybody knows, is that like, Cliff, Kaylee and I might talk to one of our clients and we say the same thing to their people that they've been saying a long time. And all of a sudden it's a fact. It's not because we're smarter, maybe Cliff's better looking, but in general, all we are is just a different voice sometimes. And there's probably something to be learned from that. But okay, so in wrapping this up, because I'm actually give your daughter an extra hug because she's held on for
Yeah.
a good long time. But if I can just kind of borrow if I can just borrow Kaylee's term, I think that having a fire bucket is probably like, if there was a piece of advice that we could give you is that have a fire bucket, always make it so you can add more information to it, because what the next thing that happens, we don't know yet, but we know that it's not going to be smooth sailing for the rest of our careers. So there's always going to be something, and how you respond to all this stuff, it's many things, right? It's our ability to kind of take care of our customers. It's a little bit of our character and being able to take care of our people and kind of put them at ease as well. But there's always people that come out of these things ahead. And there's nothing wrong with everyone that's listening to this to be some of those people. With that, I'm going to sign off and say thank you so much to Kaylee. Thank you so much to Cliff. And so long from Parts Hold.
Here to fill the order.
Cliff almost forgot his line.